I think we left off in Genesis chapter 9, and Noah had just gotten off the boat shortly before this. And I think we're going to start in verse 20 tonight. Is he made a note, or did we already do this verse? Did we already do this section here? I think this is where we left off. If it's not where we left off, let me know.
Yeah, that's about right. 9:17, 9:18.
9:18?
9:18 is where we.
Okay, so we'll start with 9:19. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them the whole earth was overspread, which takes us into 9:20, talking about the three sons of Noah and their lineage. But starting in verse 20, this is an interesting couple of verses right here, because there is debate, might not be the right word, but there's disagreement, I will say, on this. In verse 20 starts out with, Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and was covered within his tent. And Noah planting a vineyard, husbandman is somebody that cares for the land. Him planting a vineyard and getting drunk is an interesting segue right here from being on the boat to really the first activity after he gets off the boat. And there's a couple of different schools of thought on this. One school of thought is, did anybody ever, I think it was back in 2014-ish, watch that movie Noah with Russell Crowe?
Yes.
Do you remember? They portrayed Noah as, I'm just going to say, as a man with PTSD from being on the ark, and he turned into a big drunk. That's how they portrayed Noah. Would that be too general?
No, pretty accurate.
That's how the world portrayed Noah from that movie. And some people only get their biblical information from movies that Hollywood makes.
Well, isn't that the one also that, the rocks?
Yes. The rocks came alive, and
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for a while after that movie, people talked about how Noah was a drunk. So we're cautious of where we get our information, because if that's the only place the world gets their information is a movie from Hollywood, they're not going to have the right information. So the other school of thought is that, Noah was so faithful. He loved the Lord. He did what God wanted him to do. He was given a task. He did it. God even called him. What did God what verse was it in 9? If you go back, Noah, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So the other school of thought, the biblical school of thought, I'll say, because it's in my notes, in my Bible, is that there was some change that happened after the flood that affected things more drastically than before the flood. So when Noah drank some wine, he didn't intentionally get drunk. It just happened. Which to me makes more sense, because he was so faithful to the Lord. And he had found grace in God's eyes, and everything that God brought him through and saved him from and saved his family from. It's hard for me to picture Noah saying, you know what, I'm going to be a drunk. It doesn't make sense to me. So, You see these movies that they make about different biblical characters and stuff. I think we just, as Christians, we need to use caution when we go see those, because and be discerning when we go see those, because in a movie you've got to put a lot of filler into it. For 8 verses in the Bible, they get a 2-hour movie. So that's an interesting way of looking at Noah as those two pictures. But I don't believe that Noah intentionally got drunk, because it doesn't say anything else in the Bible that he continued to do it.
Hadn't reflected that of his character the whole rest of the time.
Exactly.
This goes to show you how someone who loves the Lord with all their heart can sin, and the repercussions of that can be bad to his family, on down.
Yeah.
No doubt he loved the Lord and he was faithful, but takes an act like that, and even though he loved the Lord, he's going to have to reap what he sows with
Yeah.
his family.
Shows with alcohol, the Lord doesn't accept drunkenness.
No.
And I mean, it says it all throughout his word, and how easily you can go too far without realizing you've gone too far.
And
If Noah did it.
yeah. And once you go too far, I remember when I used to drink, once I went too far, I had no filter on how much further I went.
Right.
Liquid courage.
So
If you just don't do it at all,
yeah.
you don't have to worry about going and taking it too far.
Exactly.
Don't you, see the different parts and how it might have played out is, you look at him through his journey, all that time building, construction, the sealing over, to do it just exactly how the Lord wanted it done. Then the loading of the animals, and then he didn't rest there. He had to feed. He had to go around just constantly, staying busy, keeping his family in order. Don't worry this. I can say
those boys fought on the boat.
Yeah, and just constantly, all the time. And so when that last animal come off, he just went over and he just sat down, kind of, I could see myself just, thank you, Lord.
Yep.
And just kind of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? He just let it all down and said, what you said is true. He went to praising like that, and went to eating and the sipping, and just.
Next thing you know,
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So, my study Bible says it may have been totally unexpected, because that's what alcohol does. You have a drink.
First vineyard too, wasn't it?
First vineyard after.
So maybe he learned from that experience and made sure, since he was still the husbandman of it, that he didn't drink so much from then on. Maybe I don't know.
But the one thing we can be sure of is we can't read too much more than what's into the text. The only thing we know for sure is
One time he got drunk.
Noah got drunk this time. So
He got bad drunk.
yeah.
He wasn't perfect, no matter how good you are.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. And verse 22 is, the next couple of verses are really interesting to me. And again, I'm trying not to read too much into the verses, because we only know what's in the verses. But then it says, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. We don't know how he knew. We just know he knew. Did the other boys tell him? We have no idea how he knew that Ham came in and saw him naked. but we know that he did. And we know Noah didn't like it. And we know the other two sons took extra steps, extra care to walk him backwards, cover him up, and then leave the tent. So, I've always wondered, how did he know? But
And mine says he found out.
he found out.
Mine says when Noah woke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him. He said,
Yeah. And it's interesting that Ham went out and told his brothers. He didn't keep it to himself. Hey guys, guess what?
But they didn't do what he did.
No, he
But-
didn't have the respect for his dad
Yeah.
that he should have.
Yeah. So, and because of that, his lineage suffers because of that. Once they get to Canaan,
Yeah, they're cursed.
from Canaan on, that lineage suffers because of that. It's things that can make us think of our behavior today affects our lineage down the line. Us being Christians today can have an effect 2 or 3 generations down the line of somebody being affected for Christ because of us, or being affected in a negative way because of us. But how great is it that we've got young people sitting in this church whose moms and dads bring them to church. They are affecting those children, their children's children, and their children's children by bringing them to church. We can have an effect down the generations down the road on our family because of loving the Lord. I think that's just so cool to have that kind. We won't affect everybody, but we'll affect some, which to me is important. So in verse 25, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant shall he be unto his brethren." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." Now, Shem, as you know, is the line where the Israelites come from, and eventually where the line that Jesus comes from. And it's interesting that the Canaanites, which we'll see if we get that far, the Canaanites are one of the groups of people that are a thorn in the Israelite side still today. From way back here, the Canaanites are still, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant shall he be unto his brethren." Oh. And it says, "God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. He had the Bible records one indiscretion for Noah that affects the line of Ham through Canaan. That's tough. That's tough. Any thoughts so far? So in chapter 10, it does a lot of lineage, a lot of descendants. I'm just going to go ahead, bro.
Of course, there's not a lot recorded here, but you got to wonder how Noah knew what his youngest son had done.
Yeah.
Says, what he had done. So I'm sure there's quite a bit in there. I almost said the word story.
Yeah.
quite a bit of history right in there that is not recorded, that,
Oh, something happened.
yeah, and to wake up from a drunken stupor that, to know what somebody had done.
Bobby Joe's Bible said he found out. So there was only 8 people.
Yeah.
So he had to find out from one of those other 7 people. So, but honor that father and mother comes along down the road. So,
And clearly the other 2 boys weren't okay with it.
no.
Went in and covered him up.
And they went in backwards to cover him up so they didn't see his nakedness. Yeah. Yep. So, and for Noah, if one of my kids saw that, I would be so embarrassed. It would kill me to see, to know one of my kids saw that. One saw me drunk and then saw me naked. And then my other 2 kids had to cover me up because I was too drunk to know what I was doing. That would be a terrible embarrassment. So in chapter 10, we're just going to hit some highlights here in chapter 10. It says, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog. I'm not going to read all of those. But in verse 5, we go through these sons of Japheth. And do you remember when we very first started this several months ago, I said some parts of Genesis were given a big picture look at something, and then a little while later we're given the details of the big picture. This is one of those big picture moments where Moses gives us a big overview of something, and then in chapter 11 he's going to give us details of this. But in verse 5 it says, but these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Noah is giving us a big picture of the Gentiles after they've been spread out across the land, given their own tongues, which we know doesn't happen until the Tower of Babel. But this is the big picture of that. So we can look at this and know that from Japheth, because it says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands. The vast majority of the Gentile people in this world came from the line of Japheth. The Israelites came from the line of Shem, and those that are a thorn in the Israelite side, all of the Canaanites, the Jebusites, and all that, all came from the line of Ham. That's how we kind of get the division through the 3 boys. And then Ham's descendants, it starts going through Ham's descendants. And in verse number 8, it says, and Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, in my study Bible and some other notes that I use for our study, being the mighty hunter before the Lord wasn't necessarily talking about hunting animals. It was more, he was a ruthless killer of people. He was not a good guy. Nimrod was not a good guy. He was an antagonist. As you read down through these verses, some of the cities that he created, some of his offspring. If you go down, verse 10 says, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad in Calneh in the land of Shinar. And as you go down, Nineveh's in there, and you go down to, let's see, and you go down to verse 18, and it says, and the Arvadite and the Zemarite and the Hamathite afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. So through Shem came Nimrod, came Canaan, who was cursed. We had to get through all of these people for the curse that Noah put on Canaan. And the Canaanites, as you know, are one of the groups of people that the Israelites had to defeat to get them out of the promised land, along with the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Hivites are all listed in here. And an interesting thing, it says, and the border of the Canaanites was, in verse 19, the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as thou comest to Gerar unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah. Shem, I'm sorry, not Shem, Ham, forgive me. I said Shem, I meant Ham. Ham, Nimrod came from Ham. Eventually, Canaan came through the line of Nimrod. Canaan built cities, and one of the cities that he built was Sodom and Gomorrah, which was one of the evilest cities there was, and God destroyed it with fire and brimstone. And it's interesting, to me anyway, it's interesting when I look back through the genealogy and look back through the cities to see where all of it started. And it started with Ham seeing his father naked. Ouch.
And how long after that?
What's that?
And how long after they got off the ark?
Yeah.
That happened.
Well, long enough he had to grow a vineyard, so at least a season. So, and I just find it interesting how these three boys went in different directions. Shem, the Israelites, we end up with Jesus. Ham, we end up with Sodom and Gomorrah. And Japheth, we end up with the Gentiles who Paul witnessed to, and you and I are saved because of that line, all the way back to Japheth. Wow. To me, that's just so interesting to me. Maybe I just get a little too geeky about that stuff. I don't know, but it's very interesting to me how you can look back to the flood and know, if you go to back to verse 9:19, these are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. The three sons of Noah. You and I are here tonight because of those three sons, and in particular because of Japheth, was the Gentiles. And I just find that really interesting.
Thinking about it, Noah was the one that said, cursed is, not God.
Yeah.
Noah stated that.
Yeah. And he didn't curse Ham.
No.
He cursed a descendant of his. Which...
And I don't have the power to curse you. I don't have the power to curse him. I don't have the power to curse anyone.
Nope.
I believe God allowed it though, considering what he did.
I think God already knew what they were going to do in the first place. He already knew that line was taken.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there was some kind of sexual immorality in that person to behave in that manner to be like, well, look at Dad all sprawled out there, you know, and want to tell about it. That there was some kind of already sickness in him that he was going to allow take control.
Yep,
And it
and
went down from generation to generation because when you look at, I mean, historically, you know, abusers raise abusers.
Yep.
Assault raises assault.
Yep.
You know, you see these things passed down from generation to generation. We see it in the classroom all the time.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say, well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, I mean, who's never heard that adage before?
Right.
So, and I was trying to, while you were talking, I was trying to find, after they come off the ark, can't find which verse it is, but God even says the hearts of man will always be evil or always be wicked, and it's in chapter 9 somewhere. I couldn't find it real quick, but even though they came off the ark and knew that God destroyed everybody because of wickedness and evilness, the hearts of man are still wicked and evil. Oh, man. There's only one thing that changes that.
Amen.
And it's not us.
Nothing but blood.
Nothing but the blood. Thank you. Thank you. If you go over to verse 25, this is a section where it talks about Shem's descendants. And it goes through all of his children and his children's children. Verse 25 is interesting. It says, unto Eber was born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. For in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Peleg is the father of Terah, who's the father of Abram. So we can trace the line of Shem through his children easily to Abram. And that's one of the reasons I think, it's so important that it's easy to skip over the lineages when you're reading the Bible because, especially like in Numbers. But the lineages are important because it draws us a line from the past to the present, and it helps us to connect the people.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting that they had that in there to draw a line from there to Abram. So, and then verse 32 kind of wraps it all up. The 3 sons get all wrapped up, and it says, these are the families of the sons of Noah and their generations in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. We end chapter 9 with all the nations of the earth. We end chapter 9 with, well, not completely. It says chapter 9, verse 19, these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them the whole earth was overspread. And then we end chapter 10 with, these are the families of the sons of Noah and after their generations in their nation. So we can trace the 3 directions that the boys went in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. The Israelites, the Gentiles, and the other, is it inappropriate to say Arab nations? I mean, that's how you and I know them today, right? So we can trace those 3 lines very clearly through the Bible. And we know why there are divisions in fighting in wars and hatred and everything between these people groups, it goes back, it tells us in the Bible. The Bible's a great history book.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it tells us who the land belonged to at certain times and who the land was promised to. And so we can look at history, at things happening today and know why they're happening today and know the real owners of this part of the world, that part of the world and stuff because of what the Bible tells us and what God's promises were.
You know, what surprises me too, though, is in each one of these little sections talking about the three brothers and their descendants, it also talks about each one of their clans and their language.
Yes.
Each one of them have their own language.
Because of chapter 11.
You know, my brother, sister, and I were raised by the same parents, and we all speak the same language.
Yeah.
But they've broken off and created their own languages within.
Well, remember, big picture, chapter 11 gives us the detail of the Tower of Babel, where God divided everybody's languages and split up the people groups in different areas. So next week, we'll do the Tower of Babel, where God confounds their languages.
Okay.
So,
Because I'm like, if they've gone off and then started creating their own
Yeah.
language, what on earth?
although,
So, what you're saying is this lineage has gotten to the point within this line right here was the Tower of Babel at some point, and that's why they've got the.
correct.
Got it.
Correct. Yep. That's where Moses gives a big overview of something, but then he in chapter 11 he gets to the details of the Tower of Babel, which will be next week. So here's a question for you. Would you mind if we added a little something to our Wednesday Bible study? Oh, I didn't know that was an option. Chocolate. I like her idea better than mine. So, just as a way to help us study a little bit more, I've gone through and I've got a list of 10 questions, just random Bible questions. So this is our homework for this week. So I'm going to hand these out for the answers to the questions. I don't care how if you have to use Google, whatever you do, but check it to the Bible and your answer and where you found it in the Bible. For example, the first question is, when Elijah challenged the priests of Baal, what were they sacrificing? So the answer, along with where you found it, and we'll go over the 10 questions before we start our study next week. Just to give us something a little, uh-oh, Rick, you're laughing.
That's what I said.
What did you said?
I said, looks like I'll be doing two of them.
I love it. That was great.
Something's wrong when we have the same answers. I don't know how that happened.
Here's one for Sharon.
Well, if they're right, I hope you do.
That was great.
I know what you mean, though.
But I just thought it might be fun just to, look at.
You gotta hide your sheet, don't we?
Well, Jared, I've already done mine since I made the questions. Well, no, you could say cheater since I did the questions. But Jeremy's already looked at the answer sheet. So that was the answer sheet.
I didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't see them. I could just tell it was questions. I couldn't tell you what was on them.
You probably give me, let me look at it, and I probably still can't get it.
So,
I wish I knew that. I took a picture of that.
that's why I didn't tell you. Any thoughts, comments, or complaints?